coming. But now let's get to the guests. So first, I want to introduce, of course, returning friend of the show, frequent guest, Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector and U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer, geopolitical analyst now, and commentator, military analyst, and so much more, author. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Yourself?
I am doing all right, especially because we have another returning guest that's been far too long, former CIA analyst and co-founder for the Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. It is Ray McGovern. Ray, good to see you.
Thank you, Danny. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. Well, I want to begin with the strike that Israel conducted on Iran. This happened, I believe, October 25th. Do not quote me on that. But the strike that happened that Friday, it is shrouded in mystery in many respects. And I want to begin with you, Scott, to discuss what exactly happened, because we have multiple reports coming from all sides about how much damage was done. And we have, on the one hand, Iran talking about how this strike was largely thwarted. And then we have Israel and even some on the U.S. side in the mainstream media talking about this strike as being incredibly impactful, having damaged multiple air defense systems. Scott, help us sift through the fog of war here.
Well, I mean, it's very difficult. I used to do battle damage assessment for a living during wartime, during the Desert Storm. I helped plan major strike packages that would go into Iraq to strike specific targets. I know what it takes to put a strike package together. And then I would evaluate the results, the battle damage assessment using the various intelligence resources that were available, primarily overhead collection, but you get your pilot reports and you get SIGINT, you get to listen to what the enemy says is happening or isn't happening. Things of that human intelligence will factor in, and then later on, I had the opportunity, sort of unique, as a UN weapons inspector, to actually physically inspect the targets that were bombed not too long after they were struck, and to see the difference between reality, meaning I'm on the ground seeing exactly what was struck, talking to the Iraqis about what damage was done, what wasn't done, what I thought had been done when I was a battle damage assessment officer, looking at all the intelligence, what the pilots said that they had accomplished, and what we wanted to accomplish to begin with the strike. So I'm familiar with the entire process, and therefore I would say that history shows that rarely do the pilot reports and the statements coming from the people who put the package together ever correlate to reality. It's a lot more difficult to hit a target than people think. And it's, even if you hit the target, to hit the target the way it needs to be hit to destroy the target is likewise not something that's easy. On the other hand, we also know that the people on the receiving end don't necessarily want to be honest and open about what happened either. They don't want to admit if the enemy did get a hit in or something. You want to shroud it in secrecy. If the enemy got it wrong, likewise, you don't want to come out too much and say they got it wrong, because you sort of like to allow them to keep getting it wrong. And so, here we are Monday morning quarterbacking this from thousands of miles away with absolutely incomplete data sets. What we can say is that from what we have been able to piece together through various reports, the Israelis launched a strike package of about 100 aircraft. The vast majority of these aircraft were probably missile carriers. According to the leaked intelligence, the weapons of choice for the Israelis were air-launched ballistic missiles, either the ROKS, which is a Rafael system, or one of the Sparrow series. It looks like it's the Blue Sparrow, which is a derivative of what's called the Steel or Silver Sparrow, developed by the Israelis to replicate Iranian Shahed-3 missiles. But either way, these systems aren't designed to be carried to the target. They're designed to be launched far away from the target. And it appears that the Israelis made no effort to penetrate Iranian airspace with their aircraft. That what they did is they launched 3 waves of strikes. The first wave and probably most of the second wave were designed to neutralize air defense systems so that the third wave could go in and hit a target set. The intelligence talks about 16 what's called Golden Horizon, which appears to be the Blue Sparrow air-launched ballistic missiles. These are probably your long-range systems that are ideal for striking targets in and around the capital city of Tehran. Before the strike happened, I wrote a paper which I speculated that the target deck could either be related to ballistic missile production, which would have some relevance, meaning that the Israelis could say we're legitimately striking those targets which produced the missiles that had been fired at us, so this is a legitimate attack, or a decapitation strike, playing on Netanyahu's words about wanting to replicate in Iran what had already been done in Lebanon, the assassination of Nasrallah, etc. But either way, this is not the huge, game-changing, earth-shattering attack that Netanyahu had been promising. He had been saying that we were going to rock Iran's boat. This was going to be something that would cause the whole world and the whole region to wake up. No, 16 missiles isn't that much. When one of the first strikes we launched in Iraq against the Iraqis was against the Taji missile production and storage facility north of Baghdad. We used B-52 bombers that fired 35 air-launched cruise missiles, conventional air-launched cruise missiles. And these 35 missiles hit 8 distinct targets. So there's a lot of target replication, et cetera. And it looks like, with 16 Golden Horizon missiles, you're going to be able to hit around 8 targets, because generally speaking, you're going to put 2 systems on each target to get the result that you want. That's just standard targeting practice. And it appears that the Israelis were going for the Parchin missile facility. There's some overhead imagery that suggests that some targets may have been hit on that. And that's it. It doesn't seem that they achieved much of anything. Parchin has had industrial accidents in the past. When you're doing solid rocket motor production, and you have an accident, things go boom dramatically. A lot of flame, a lot of smoke, a lot of thunder, a lot of shaking, and it's visible from Tehran. There's nothing coming out of Tehran that shows Parchin going boom. There's no flame. There's no smoke. The imagery shows what looks like some impact points. I have to tell you, it's very deceptive. If the construction type that you see at Parchin is standard solid rocket motor production, construction. The Iraqis had a plant outside of Baghdad called the Balat al-Shuhada plant. It was a German built solid rocket motor production facility, very similar in layout and design as the Parchin plant. We bombed the hell out of it during Desert Storm and didn't do a damn thing to it. It's just built to absorb punishment. And the other thing we learned is that the Iraqis were very good at evacuating the valuable production equipment in these facilities. So even when we hit something and got a direct hit, there was nothing in there. My understanding is that the Iranians got a couple hours heads up from the Russians, and that given that, they'd be fools to leave very valuable mixing equipment in place. And so I believe they, like anybody would have, pre-identified evacuation areas. They would remove this stuff to those evacuation areas, and whatever the Israelis hit, it didn't accomplish anything. That's my understanding. It's also my understanding that the Israelis, again, none of their aircraft penetrated Iran. They weren't designed to penetrate Iran. They weren't intended. They launched from around what we would call Balad Air Base, Salahadin province north of Baghdad. That's an area that the Israelis were familiar with because when the United States had a major base in Balad, the Israelis flew in and out of there all the time as part of covert operations, etc. So they're familiar with that operation. They had their F-35 combat air patrol overhead, and the F-35 is supposed to be stealthy. And it's my understanding that the Iranians locked onto the F-35 with an unidentified system, either an S-400 or an Iranian indigenous radar, and it scared the you-know-what out of the Israelis because you're not supposed to be locking on to an F-35. And the Iranians went, hello, we see you, we're here, and we could shoot you down if we wanted to. And that caused the Israelis to actually abort part of their mission. So not every rocket got off. This was not a successful strike for the Israelis. All the evidence points to this being that. When you read the media, and I'll leave it here, you just see the stupidity of the people that are crafting the pro-Israeli narrative. One of the things that are saying, in addition to knocking out all of the S-300 radars and all the Iranian radars, they say, and this was the Israeli plan. By knocking out these radars, they've made it impossible for Iran to launch future ballistic missile strikes against Israel because they can't guide their missiles to their target without these radars. And and on Twitter, everybody's going, "Yeah, Israel!" All the way. And I'm like, you guys don't know anything about ballistic missile guidance and control, do you? Because that ain't how it works. But it just shows the ignorance that's out there. I think Iran came out of this looking pretty good. I don't know how many systems they shot down. I don't know how many they jammed. But I can say with a high degree of confidence that very few of the targets that they were intending to strike were struck. And if they were trying to take out the Parchin ballistic missile production facility, they failed miserably.